Nitnat River behind me, right beside me. It's probably pretty loud. And I found a side road I wanted to take. I passed it a few years in a row, and I finally took this winding road all the way down here and hit the river. Looks like a couple people camped here, and this is a real popular place for people to fish for spawning salmon, late season salmon that are up in the river. So big spring salmon come up in here. Later on, coho will come up in here, a few steelhead, but predominantly people come here to catch the big spring salmon, also known as Chinook salmon, king salmon. And also, a lot of anglers have been harassed here for years. Always reports around Nitnat on the high side of the bridge upriver, which is right here, as well downriver by the lake. But anyway, it's raining intermittent rain, so I'm going to pass on sharing a bunch of voices from here. And it's getting a little late, it's like 5 o'clock. We still got a couple hours to go to get home. But I thought I'd come and take a drive down this road and see this piece of river. And show you guys. So that's where I am. You can Google it up. Nitnat. N-I-T. N-A-T. Nitnat River. We're on the high side, up in the hills, way above the lake. And this is a hot spot for people to get harassed. And when you get back in the timber on this old road, it's pretty dark and thick right away. Classic Vancouver Island rainforest right here. I don't know why this road was originally here. A lot of fishermen have been, and campers have been harassed around here. Wouldn't be too much fun. Fairly remote here. What do you think? You want to go camping here?
No.
Why not?
It's too scary.
What?
Too scary.
Too scary? It's dark in the camera. I guess it's getting late, isn't it? Huh?
Like 5.
5?
Summer?
It's so dark. It's all the leaves in the canopy make it so dark in here. Anyway, there you go. That was the road I always wanted to check out and see what was down there. I knew it hit the river eventually. You get some other old ones like this. Who knows where that goes? I guess it must go hit the river somewhere else too, eh? I'm guessing. Not a good place to break down, huh?
No.
Yeah, it kind of sucked. All right, there you go. One quick little tour. All right, so here's the downriver view of the Nitnat River. And up that direction is what's called the Carmanah Walbran. And a buddy of mine who's a full-time fishing guide and cuts wood during the off-season, he had one of these beings standing there in the clear cut up in those hills, just standing there looking at him with his hand on top of a stump, standing beside the stump. And I was kind of surprised to hear that story out of him after knowing him for so long. But anyway, this is the looking downriver, the Nitnat River, and this is where people get harassed quite often. All around here. Alright, I adjusted the exposure. Look at that rainforest in there. I decided to take this gravel road down beside the river and see where it went. Maybe I'll do some shares here. We'll see. Might be able to pull it off right here. It's not a bad backdrop. That's a good one. What do you think? Sarah reminded me that we're not really in panic to get home and encouraged me to stop for a minute. So I'll share one, but it's starting to rain. See how it goes. But this is the Nitnat River behind me, and plenty of fishermen have been harassed by the forest beings here for years gone by and still presently today. Now listen to this. This is titled 2017 Encounter. Steve, the first email I sent had some spelling and grammar errors. Also, it missed some aspects that I wanted to highlight, so I'm resending it to you. This one will be a little long, but I feel it's necessary to feature my experiences and how I discovered what might be the best way to break the ice with others and open up the subject of what I call the others. Now the road, quick note, the road that takes us from home to Nanaimo, on the other side of the island, the highway is blocked still from the big huge forest fire. So this is a detour through logging roads. So the bridge over this river is back there, half a K or whatever, so we're gonna hear the odd engine as vehicles are going along the logging road down there, traveling, right? That's where we are and why we're here. Among these phenomena, I've experienced a white, black-eyed thing, Sasquatch, and amber orbs. I'll do my best to recall where all these occurrences happened. Let's start with my dad. He hunted the Blue Mountains in Oregon in the Mount Emily unit. He always told me there is no such thing as Sasquatch. I believed this until high school when I started hearing more stories of this being. It was the spring of 2009 when I was hunting turkey in the White River unit out of Pine Grove, Oregon. I was 19 years old. I'd walked down toward the White River Canyon and was resting against an oak tree at the edge of a small meadow. It was around noon. The weather was beautiful with birds and squirrels actively making noise. West of my position up the canyon, I heard a loud, guttural scream. The woods were silent. I did my best to look at the edge of the meadow to see what that was, but I could not see it. I chose to walk quickly back up the hill to camp. The woods remained quiet for another 30 minutes. I count this as my first experience. I knew at that point there was something else sharing the woods we did not know about. 2013, I was hunting turkey in the spring with my buddies Doug and Alan. We had committed to backpack up to the top of this knob to find unpressured birds. We managed 1.5 miles until we made camp at the edge of a ranch's land. Being young, we thought it'd be a good idea to wind up the fence to make it easier to cross, so we might hunt the backside of that property along the fence line. After this, we split up from our camp and set out to kill a tom. I dropped down the backside of the camp through a steep draw and began climbing up the other side. I found a flat portion on the hillside where I could cross the fence I was walking along. As I straddled the fence wire, I looked down and noticed some long, reddish-colored hair tangled in the barbed wire. I grabbed a strand that was 8 inches long. The hair was soft and frizzy. I thought about it possibly being a bear, but I considered my time interning with a taxidermist, and I do not recall the bears being brought in having hair that long. Then, I thought about the scream from 2009, and I thought, it's a Sasquatch. I went back to camp, showed my buddies the hair. They concluded it had to be a horsehair. They directed me to the fence where I could find horsehair to compare this to. In my comparison, I noted the hair I had found, and the horsehair on the fence were different. The color of the hair I found differed, and the horsehair was coarse, where the hair I found was soft. Anyways, I ultimately dropped that hair on the ground and went about the rest of the hunt. But this hunt was going to get real scary. That night after finding the hair, my buddy Doug and I relaxed by the fire and drank some booze. We were having a good time, and Doug started going off about that hair I found. He said, "You think the Sasquatch exists? Why don't we have more evidence?" He then proceeded to stand up and yell at the top of his lungs into the forest, "There is no such thing as Sasquatch. If there's a Sasquatch here, show yourself." He screamed this into the darkness when the fence we had wound up suddenly started unwinding about 50 feet in front of Doug. He ran to Alan and they cowered by the fire. I stood up full of booze and yelled, "Get the F out of here!" I stood my ground and got big. The woods got quiet, and I returned to the fire to drink some more. Doug and Alan tried to find whatever it was that unwound the fence using a flashlight, but nothing was seen. To this day, Doug and Alan will tell you that the fence just unwound itself, but I still find it strange that it happened right as Doug was challenging a Sasquatch. In 2017, it was late summer in the Hepner unit. My buddy Luke and I were hunting elk with our bows off the 2107 road by Penland Lake. Penland Lake, P-E-N-L-A-N-D, Lake. This hunt and the hunts that followed have led me to call these woods the Black Forest of Oregon. Luke and I backpacked in 1.5 miles up the gated 2107 road. We found a spot right off the gravel to set up camp. That night we slept in hammocks. It was the first night we heard a tree fall about 100 yards up the hill from us. I've been in the woods since the age of 4, and I've never heard a tree fall naturally. I didn't think much of it. However, I definitely thought something was fishy when the next day we had another tree fall some 80 yards from us while we were scaling the hill on the other side of the road from camp. And I became even more suspicious when 2 more trees fell around camp the second night. Yeah, it's a bit of a red flag. I spent that weekend looking for an abundance of diseased or damaged trees, but they all looked healthy and normal. 2017, 2 weeks later. My brother Thomas and I backpacked into the same spot as 2 weeks prior. This time, though, I was determined to sleep in a tent. All the trees falling before had me a little rattled. My brother and I set up camp in the dark and got some sleep the first night. We headed out the next morning to put in a good hunt. Around 11 a.m., we returned to camp. While eating lunch, I sat on a log facing camp. My brother was digging in the bag of food we brought up. In this moment, I heard a light thump. I turned to my right, and I saw something moving quickly and not making any noise. No matter how hard I tried, I could not get it in my vision. It was like a black, blurry thing that I just couldn't get in focus. I turned to my brother and asked if he heard or saw what I just experienced. He said no. I felt a little loony and blew it off. That night, Thomas and I were walking back to camp after sitting on a pond for the evening hunt. We were approximately 80 yards from camp when we both heard something running from our camp through the trees away from us. It sounded bipedal. We noticed it was around 100 yards up the hill when it stopped making noise. Thomas and I chose to play music on his phone as loud as possible to make our presence known. If it was a lion or a bear, we thought the unnatural sounds would drive it away from camp. We stayed up till 10 p.m. blaring music. At this point, we went to bed. Prior to committing to sleep, we positioned the bikes we rode in a U around the tent to offer some separation between whatever it was out there and us. As I laid there, I couldn't sleep. I was on high alert. All we had was one .45 pistol between the two of us. I listened and began hearing what sounded like small rocks hitting the tree above our tent. It was about every 10 minutes I would hear that sound. Not on any other tree, just the one right by our tent. This continued through the night. Around 1 a.m. I fell asleep. My brother happened to wake up and he heard this thing walking in front of our tent. He stayed awake a while longer but eventually fell back asleep. How many times had we heard that? Isn't that frickin' bizarre? How many times we heard about people falling asleep again anyway? I woke up around 4 a.m. and went back to listening to the gentle sound of small rocks hitting the tree by our tent. It was around 4:30 a.m. when I heard a new sound. It was something walking across the gravel road toward our camp. I could hear the rocks shifting under its feet. I continued listening. I now was hearing the pine needles crunching and shifting as it drew closer to our tent. At this point, I was putting my hand on the .45 and was preparing to fight for my life. And then it got real weird. The thing that crossed the road stopped and let out a horrifying roar at something in our camp. I now recognize the thing as a mountain lion. I could hear it turning away from camp and leaving back across the road. By the time I heard the lion on the gravel, I could hear a new series of sounds from the right side of the tent some 10 yards away. How you heard a mountain lion walking and identifying that as a mountain lion is beyond me. It was the sounds of wood breaking and limbs cracking. This went on for about a minute. I didn't hear any growls or grunts, just wood breaking and splintering. Everything got quiet, and 20 minutes or so passed. Then I heard the small rock start hitting the tree again. My brother and I woke up around 6 a.m. and remained in the tent until 8 a.m. We were waiting for the sun to be high in the sky before we stepped out to assess the scene. I looked for an abundance of small rocks around the tree, but I found it difficult to assess rock abundance in the forest. After this, I investigated the trees by camp. I was just beginning to study the limbs when my brother yelled at me to come over and see what he found. In the needles were 3 tracks, approximately 8 feet from the door of the tent. The last track in the series was a size 13 print with obvious toe impressions. I took a picture and instructed my brother to pack up. We're getting out of here. We left, but it wasn't my last time hunting elk in there. 2 weeks later, Luke and I were back out in the Hepner unit chasing elk around the 2107 road. After the events of 2 weeks prior, I told Luke we were going to camp near Ditch Creek Ranger Station off the main road. We did several hunts into that area and saw lots of elk, but it wasn't until the last evening of the trip that we stumbled into more Sasquatch activity. We hiked west of camp till we hit a fence line that led to a wallow. We hunted this area all day until it was dusky. We walked from here back to camp. We're using a horse trail that skirted a meadow to navigate our way back. At this meadow, we began hearing crashing and banging across the way, accompanied with whoops and grunts. For some reason, I was feeling bold, so I began to slowly walk toward the forest line to see if I could spot one of these things. I was halfway across the meadow when Luke urged us to go due to daylight running low. I was persuaded to follow his lead and stop pushing in on these unknown sounds. We made it back to camp. That concluded our 2017 archery season. Now I knew there was Sasquatch in those woods. 2018. It was late summer 2018. Luke and I were back at it, archery hunting elk up the 2107 road in the Hepner unit. This time, we would hike back even further. Luke and I wound up on Swale Creek, S-W-A-L-E Creek, where we located a horse trail that runs along the creek into a large meadow with several elk wallows. Sounds like it's probably elk trails. I don't know why outfitters or hunters would ride their horses in there. Anyway, sorry. Along the horse trail, we found an old camp. We decided to make this home for the week. As the days wore on up there, I'd use the downtime to find loose barbed wire in the woods. I used this barbed wire to begin constructing a fence around our camp. Luke gave me a hard time and would point out I'm building a Sasquatch fence. I guess I was, even though it wasn't big enough to keep those things out. It was day 5 of our hunt. Luke and I put on 10 miles that day, covering the land from Swale Creek to Drift Creek, and eventually completing the circle walking back on the 2107 road. There's a lot of hiking, and I was planning on resting the remainder of the day in camp. Luke chose to pursue a big bull that was frequenting the hill above camp. Luke left around 5 p.m. I sat in my chair for another 30 minutes when I decided to start making some dinner. I was standing at my kitchen in camp. It's a board between 2 trees, making some mountain house in the jet boil. From the kitchen, I'm facing north toward the meadow where the horse trail enters. Approximately 60 yards from where I was standing. Is that you? What? That was weird. Approximately 60 yards from where I was standing, there was a stump. I had my hat on facing my work. The bill of my hat obscured my eyes from being seen as long as I kept facing the food I was preparing. From the top of my vision, I saw a black, hairy thing come from the forest to the stump. They never made a sound, maneuvering through the trees. Thought to myself, am I seeing this? It was a very odd moment in time where I could see this thing behind the stump looking at me. And I didn't quite know what it was. I kept my head down. My eyes rolled up so I could study this thing. It wasn't a bear, it wasn't a lion, it wasn't an ape. It simply wasn't anything I had seen in the woods before or at a zoo. To describe it, I saw it was covered in black hair from head to toe, but it had a face like a man's, yet it was different. The brow was heavy, the cheekbones were pronounced, the nose was broad and flat, and the eyes were black and appeared sunk back into the socket. I recall the skin was visible from its forehead to the cheeks and a strip to the chin. The skin was black though, like charcoal. I noted it was pushing its back against the stump and rotating its head over its right shoulder to look at me. As a result of its posture, I saw the shoulders were slightly cockeyed, like I was not yet seeing how broad its shoulders were. I will tell you, I was at first confused at what I was looking at, but in time I began to figure out what it was, and I was looking at a Sasquatch. As I stood there with my head down and eyes rolled up, I was becoming more uneasy. I also knew at some point I had to show this guy that I'd seen him and the game is over. It took everything I had to commit to making purposeful eye contact, and when I did, we both just stared at each other. It lasted 3 to 5 seconds, but it was confirmation upon confirmation that I'm looking at a Sasquatch and it's looking at me. The Sasquatch turned his head around to face away from me. I recall it looked like it was panicking. Those shoulders bulging out on both sides of the stump told me that critter is way bigger than it looks. The shoulders rose up and down 2 times and the Sasquatch rolled into the thick cover across from where it first entered the trail. It moved so fast, and never once did it make a sound. And just like that, I'm in the club of no return. I can never unsee that, and I can never undo the terror I felt immediately after I got in the thick trees. My biggest questions after it left my sight was, what does that beast want? Was it watching me? Is it circling back to do something? Is Luke okay? All this and more at once. It's overwhelming. Luke found me in camp that night with all the lanterns turned on, one hand carrying my .45 and the other hand pushing the button on my Hoochie Mama elk call. It was a sight to behold. I don't know if I would have been hitting the cow call, man. I got the same call. After Luke and I sat down for dinner, I asked him if he was playing a prank on me. He looked at me with a puzzled expression and said, "No, you heard me blowing the bugle up on the hill. How could I be in 2 places at once?" And he was right. I told him what happened, and he looked at the fire, drank some whiskey, and said, "I wish you hadn't told me that." From his experience, I believe the Sasquatch I saw, from this experience, I believe the Sasquatch I saw was a juvenile. It was only 5'8" at most, and very broad shoulders. Steve, you have a video you did featuring the photos from a First Nation friend. Those photos, that's exactly what I saw. It looked exactly like that. I've seen so many Bigfoot, quote, Bigfoot, end quote, videos / pictures, and what I saw looks similar. But it wasn't what the mainstream thinks Sasquatch looks like. It was a man. And it wasn't a man. Like you say, they are wild men. To the initial point I made about telling people about Sasquatch experiences, I find the best way to start off with that conversation is asking the question, what do you think about Sasquatch? Depending on the person's reaction will dictate to you. It will dictate if you want to engage in a conversation about your experiences or maybe not waste your time. Yeah, it works good for me, man. That's what I've found for sure. By asking that question, I've heard 3 coworkers tell me their encounters with this beast. One tried to shoot him, one did shoot him, and the other was intimidated by him. There are a lot more people in this world that have experienced Sasquatch or something in the other category than we know. All you have to do is ask. Stay safe, keep up the fight for truth. Sincerely, Nick Marlowe. P.S. If you'd like me to send pics of the track, let me know. Dude, if you want to send them, send away, man. I'm sure the viewers here will want to see them for sure. Myself, I've seen a shit pile of them. So I'm not going to lose sleep if I don't. But the people here do want to see it. So, let it rip. And make sure you share anything else you got with us in the future. Maybe since then, I don't know when you wrote this in, but since you did, maybe something new's happened. I don't know. Maybe you learned some more. I don't know. But now while I'm in front of under the camera, my friend of mine, the fishing guide, he said that thing was standing, that he saw up in those hills, he was deer hunting. It was in the fall, and it was standing in the middle of a clear cut, and it had its hand up on a stump, just like that in front of him. He said he was standing behind the stump, looking over the stump at him with his hand on top of it, just in the clear cut like that. Like, no way. And he said it was dark brown. And I said, what'd you do? He goes, I got the hell out of there. And it's just a short, straight to the point, not much build up or drama, nothing at all, just matter of fact. I was deer hunting the Carmana, Wall-brand Carmana, and this thing was standing in a clear cut looking at me with his hand on a stump. End of story. Now, Sarah's in the truck, being very patient. So maybe I'll do one more. And if I have to, I'll finish up at home in the morning with some more. This is titled, Not Much Rattles Me, But, is the title of this email. Dear Steve, thank you for giving us a platform to share our stories without being judged. Not much rattles me, and I fear no man, as I am very capable of handling myself and others if need be. I've grown up in central North Carolina. We have the Appalachian Mountains to the west and some of the best beaches to the east. I've fished, bow hunted, and hiked, primitive camped all my life, and I know what just about all wildlife habits are. Their traits and sounds during all seasons. There is the Uwharrie National Forest. Uwharrie. It's the Uwharrie National Forest. Very close to where I've grown up, and I've used them for decades. This is a recreational area with lots to offer. ATV/off-road 4x4 trails, camping sites, That's different. Now there's two dogs and people behind me. Alright. Where was I? Sorry. This is a recreational area with lots to offer. ATV/off-road 4x4 trails, camping sites, fishing access. And in the fall, hunting is popular. The Yadkin River runs through it with multiple dams forming many reservoirs that each are very diverse. At the time, there were only very little trickles of Sasquatch sightings in this area, and I just thought they were BS to bring in business to the local outpost. In the early fall of 2006, I went to another lake and cast netted blueback herring and large threadfin shad into my 30-gallon bait tank. I then left and went to my favorite lake, Falls Reservoir, to set up for the night, as I usually fish until the late morning hours. I got to the ramp area and no one else was there. I launched and went upstream towards the dam. It was a cool night with no cloud cover, with a little over half moon. I anchored up below the dam at the end of a long channel that is about 7 to 8 feet deep until dropping off into the deeper water. Facing the dam with the moonlight in a center console boat. I didn't need much light to set up and do my thing. I had about 60 feet of anchor into the shallow channel from the bow, and another drop anchor straight down, running 6 different rod setups off the rear fishing for striped bass and catfish. At about 11:30 p.m., I heard from the starboard side up the hill about 60 yards away the loudest screaming sound I have ever heard. I'm thinking, what the hell was that? And then a very large rock went into the water just ahead of me. Then another rock about a minute later. 3-4 minutes went by, then the same screaming noise was heard again, but this time I think it was within 30 feet of me, again on the starboard side. Then I started to get nervous. With the moonlight and the lights from the dam ahead of me, I could see the channel very well. I shit you not. Then I saw a large-shouldered, no-neck, conical head creature crossing the channel just upstream of where my anchor was. Remember, it's 7-8 feet deep here. So I estimate what I saw to be 8 to 9 feet tall. I pulled out my million candle power spotlight, and that POS didn't work. Go figure. I then got a reverberating growl sent towards me from the port side, and I realized that shit was about to get real. I immediately reeled in all my rods, I went to the bow, dropped the trolling motor, started pulling in the bow anchor, and a huge rock splashed so close it damn near hit me and soaked me. I spun the trolling motor around to get the F out of there, and while this was happening, I heard it growl again. Both times it sent a weird, numbing feeling into my body. I got the boat around on high, dumping bait, pulled in the aft anchor in, pulled the drain on the bait tank, and with the main motor went full speed back towards the boat ramp. Pulling into the cove with the ramp, I slowed down to get my shit together, and there were no other vehicles in the parking lot. A few days later, I shared this story with one of my friends that is intelligent enough and worthy of being told. He turned white as a sheet, believed me, and understood. Is the only person until now, /you, I told this to. And did return to fish this lake I did return to fish this lake the same way many times, but not in the same location. I'm now a confirmed personal believer, even though I always thought the Patterson video was very real and has other stories and videos from Les Stroud too. Recently you read a story from the same area where a guy went on a guided expedition to find such creatures, and this is a recent sighting as well. He went on about how he thought he had been shadowed by one, and when he told the guide about it and showed the prints, the guide blew him off. I remember that story. Well, I personally know of this so-called guide. I can tell you he is a major pile of shit that'll do anything for a buck. He's had many local businesses in the area fail due to him being a total pussy and fraud. One of those guys you want to take behind the barn. The last part, my wife's father was a farmer his whole life, not far from where these sightings have come from, just a little more to the south/east. He grew soybeans, feed corn, and cotton on a little over 1,100 acres. The property backs up to the National Wildlife Refuge. The area has its share of feral hogs and massive wild white-tailed deer. After the crops are in, we lease the land to a hunt club consisting of lawyers and doctors that have penthouse-style blinds next to the refuge area for the fall/winter hunting season. I too have rights to hunt there and can bring a friend, but not near where the lease area is. I only bow hunt, and our state regulations do not allow you to carry a firearm during the season. The second morning of bow season, I climb into my stand about 15 feet off the ground just before first light. I don't see much, but after about an hour, I shit you not, a cougar, puma, mountain lion, whatever they are called, walks from behind me from the woods, walks parallel to the field directly under my stand. With no gun, only a bow, I sit scared out of my mind. He or she does not notice or look up at me, and I stood hardly any chance of being able to take him or her out. Thank God it kept going and proceeds down the edge of the woodline for about 70 to 100 yards. I don't know what that was over there. Whatever. These are not supposed to be here and are not native to our area. When gun season came in, I let my friend have use of my stand and told him to be careful. as he knows what I experienced. He's about to go in during the daylight hours and stay until dark 30. He told me he noticed something odd in the distance before going into where the stand is. Using his spotting scope, he saw the same damn cat, or another one, as I did. No hunting that day for him. Since then, my father-in-law has passed, and the land sold off to other farmers in the area. I still have rights to hunt there, but I choose not to. Just goes to show. The creatures that people say aren't real, or aren't in your particular area, don't know what they are talking about until it happens to them. Please keep my name out of this, as I would still like to fish and hunt the areas and not get bombed with emails, PMs, and just people bugging me with questions about my encounters. Keep up the great work and stay safe out there, my friend. Hey, you too, man. I appreciate your time you just took out to share that with us. I think you just said you shared this with your friend and us only. I'll tell you what, it might be in your interest, maybe, next time you see somebody in that community, just look at square in the eye and say, hey, you ever seen something odd around here? And then if they say, what do you mean? And you say, hey, well, I don't know. Something weird? Ever seen or heard anything weird around here? Like something that's like really frickin' bizarre? You know? Do it sincere. Square up with them. Square up with them, face up, look them in the eye, and ask them dead serious, man to man, man to woman, whatever you want to call it. And they know. When somebody's had this experience, they know. They will know. They will know what you're getting at, without a doubt. And they'll spill. They'll tell you. They will tell you. And the big cat thing isn't hilarious. It makes me kind of laugh in a sarcastic way. It more makes me cringe. There's actually human beings out there that will dictate whether or not there's cougars in a certain state or province. It's almost like they expect you to believe that these animals will stop dead when it comes to a state or county line or a provincial line or a country line, border, whatever. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Very funny. Amusing. Sad in a way, because usually most of the time these people who work for the government in the Department of Fish and Game, unfortunately, are the ones that also take part in making rules. Meanwhile, they're usually about as smart as a frickin' pickle. And the people that are that work for the Ministry of Environment, you know what I'm talking about, here in British Columbia especially. Anyway, I better get going. Sarah's been real patient sitting in the truck. I'm leaning on the front of it. And we've got about 2 hours left of logging road travel to get back home. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I might even tack on a few more emails in the morning onto this video before I let it rip. And that's it. But anyways, I shared the Nitnat River with all the people who've never been here. You can look it up, Nitnat River on Vancouver Island. And believe me, the whole length of this waterway, including the lake, is a frickin' hot spot for activity. Big time. Looks like he's coming our way. Hopefully we can scare him away.